In the middle of tremendous darkness and personal tragedy, false lights are trying to guide us, and they can bring shipwreck. We must be focused on God's pathways and His light in the storms of life. Christ is the light of navigation. Hello and welcome to the Light of Navigation and this Reflections podcast. My name is Marguerite Lever-Woodall, and I'm an author and speaker and your host. In these podcasts, I love to explore and contemplate different life issues to find what their possible solutions are through the lens of God's wisdom and His words. Seeking His wisdom through life's issues is the best life path possible. In this episode, called The Holiday Voice and the Room at the Inn, I'm combining two different perspectives on the holidays. One is through the viewpoint of loss. The other is through the vantage point of what we value in our hearts. Will you join me in giving thought on the tough issues of life and discover God's pathway through it? The holiday occasions represent joy, celebration, and deepening relationships with those around us. We remember each other with a card, a call, or a gift. For those who are grieving, the celebrations serve to point out the empty places once occupied by our loved ones. The obvious becomes a glaring, painful reminder. They're no longer physically present, nowhere to be found, and it can haunt us. Another facet of loss that's impacted me, I think others can attest to also. What is it? It's the absence of the person's voice after they're gone. The voice God gives us impacts those around us. It's an identifier, an audible proof of life that we carry when we communicate with others. When my mother passed, I was lost for a time, not hearing her voice with the weekly phone calls she would make. The sound from her life force abruptly stopped. A person's voice is the audible evidence that they are alive and present here with us. An emptiness became evident in my daily life when my mother's phone calls ceased. I remember just before Christmas one year, I dreamt of the time I'd be spending with my family for the holidays. In my dream, the holiday celebration was a wonderful time spent together as a family, and all was well, until I had to go home later that day. I wept in the dream, and also physically in my sleep when I realized I was going back to an empty home, and what felt like an empty life. The dream abruptly ended with the reality that my son had died the year before, and wasn't there anymore, and neither was his voice. After the death of my husband, Randy, I struggled to remember what the sound of his laughter was like. We'd been married for 5 years, and this was my first experience with the death of someone close to me, and I was unfamiliar with the dynamics of grief. Through these experiences, I've learned there's a God-given mechanism that will block some memories for a time when death strikes, especially sudden death, until some of the grief passes. It's the shock of the passing that is a buffer of sorts. It will slowly wear off over time, and when it does, intimate and emotional memories do return when we're mentally and emotionally ready to handle them. As time passed, I came to that place where I longed to remember Randy's laughter. I wanted to hear it again. I loved the unabashed and joyous way he did it. As I stood in my home one day, I prayed to God, asking him to restore the memory of my husband's laughter. Immediately, in the moments that followed my prayer, God released a buried memory. It was my husband sitting on the living room couch one day. He was laughing uproariously, and it was awesome. I felt as though I was standing there again in the actual memory as it occurred. At the same time, I was greatly relieved that the memory was still there. More than anything for me, it's the voices of the loved ones that are missing that hurt the most. Without it, a subtle emptiness prevails. We still expect to hear them, but we no longer do. Our voice is one of the biggest indicators that we're present and living life. I don't hear my son's voice anymore, or the other voices of those I've loved. But as a follower of Christ and a firm believer in heaven's reality, I do know that I will hear their voices again, and we will be speaking daily and laughing often for an eternity. The second holiday thought I'd like to share is this. During the Christmas season, the story of Christ's birth is everywhere, especially in church culture. In the midst of it, a different reflection came to me. Jesus' parents were turned away at the local inn when they sought shelter before his birth. The innkeeper explained it was full and no rooms were available. He was unaware that the Son of God was about to be born and did not know who he was turning away. A question comes to mind for those who follow Christ. Are we truly inviting him to fill every room in our hearts with his presence? Our hearts have many rooms filled with stuff. You know what I mean. They hold things we want to keep and refuse to let go of. These rooms are full of us, our goals, our pain, our plans, our ways, and our desires. When Christ comes to the main entrance, the doorway of our hearts, he's seeking to occupy the rooms within. He comes pregnant with his kingdom and his power, which is meant to give birth in us. Do we send the innkeeper of self-interest to answer the door and tell him there is no room at the inn? Thank you so much for listening to my heart's thoughts today. If these comments and insights would be an encouragement or perhaps comfort for someone you know, please pass them on. Your comments are valued, and subscribing is also deeply appreciated. In the next episode of Reflections, there's a closer look at what it means to go through a desert season spiritually and in life. The brief story about the travelers brings a unique look at how God gets us through it.